Hello, everybody, and welcome to, I'm going to call this an episode of Inspire Me Forward because that's where we're going to host this. But this is a bonus episode, a very special episode. And we're going to call it, or we call it, because this is our third one we've had, 3 humans, 6 questions, no agenda. And we think of this like, I think of it like a dialogue. It's a new way to have a conversation. It's a new way to have a dialogue. And we've had two, well, 4 years ago, we had two of them. And I found them the other day and thought, we got to bring this back because they were phenomenal and profound and really rich conversations. And it was important, I thought, to bring back that platform and that concept. So with me today, with us today, we have Judy Brightman from Australia and Kate Neligan from Colorado. Where are you at,
Yes,
Kate?
for now.
For now,
For
okay.
now, near Colorado.
All right. So I'd love for you ladies just introduce yourself a little bit before we jump in. But Kate, if you're on screen there, so do you want to just say hello and where you're from and what you do?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Kate Neligan. You've got my mares, Phoenix and Salida in the back. We're outside of Boulder, Colorado for now, hopefully in California very soon. And I am an equine partnered life coach and healer, animal communicator, author, and speaker. And happy to be here because I love great conversations and your work as well, Linda.
Wow, thank you so much, Kate. We're so glad you are here. And with your horses too. That's wonderful to bring in that energy. So thank you. Judy, from around the world. Good morning.
Good morning. Um, Good afternoon and evening to those in other parts of the world. So I'm speaking to you from Gamilaroi country in New South Wales. And I just want to welcome all our ancestors and acknowledge the ancestors of place and land where we are, and the elders past, present and emerging. I too am an equine guided coach. I partner with horses to help humans reconnect to their center and connect to others and the land. I also use a variety of tools, energetic and somatic, to work with humans and horses. And I'm privileged to do a lot of healing sessions, both in person and remote, for horses in particular, but also cats and dogs. And I'm very honored to guide them as they transition across the Rainbow Bridge to the other world. It is one of my greatest honors and privileges to be a psychopomp for them doing that. So, yeah, so like Katie, I work, with healing and coaching, and the horses guide and inspire me in all of that.
Well, we are so glad you are both here. Welcome. For those that don't know me, my name's Linda Watson. I am from Ontario, Canada. And again, I have lived in the horse world for a number of years and had the fortune to spend 20 of those years on my own property. And currently I freelance and I publish a magazine that both Kate and Judy have written for, and called Equine Leadership. And that really is where this all, I guess, started from, was through the magazine, meeting such wonderful authors and other folks that were dedicated to the horse-human connection and relationship. And we started having conversations, and we started having just conversations. That's all they were. There was no agenda. There was no objective. There was no, we have to get to this goal. And they were so rich that we just decided to bring them together and just bring those questions that were in our hearts and come to that with this idea of not having that agenda, that coming with open hearts so that we could hear other perspectives. I like to think of perspectives are something that we gather. They're not an and, they're not an or thing, like I have it or you have it, I have this one or I have that one. It's an and thing. And we gather them, and the more perspectives we can hold, we don't have to agree or live by them, but the more we can hold, the more we have empathy, the more we can see from different from other people's perspectives. And isn't that what empathy is seeing, seeing other people and how they walk in their shoes. So the idea of this is really just to sit in the unknown. I don't know what questions you're both bringing. You don't know what questions I'm bringing. Honestly, my questions didn't come till this morning. I had a great conversation with a dear friend, and the questions fell out of that. So we don't know what each other is bringing to the conversation, and therefore we can't plan answers. And that is the beauty of this all. So I hope you enjoy it. We're going to get started. We're going to try to keep this within an hour, and then we're going to open up the floor afterwards for a bit. So Judy, I'm going to let you go first and pose your question. I'll let you answer it, or if you'd like to throw it to us and you can answer afterwards, that's up to you.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, coming up with questions was kind of interesting to see what sort of came through and what spoke and what felt right. But I'm going to start with one. There's an African proverb, and I grew up in Africa. So everything in my life has been guided by African wisdom, essentially, and tradition and beliefs. So they say that to lose the way is to learn the way. And I think, that really describes most of our lives, I'm sure. But I'm interested in kind of, what we've learned along the way from losing the way, or where you're lost now and what you're learning from in that. So that's my question to give you time to sort of reflect on it. From my own life, of course, there are, I can think of so many examples. I mean, I think really, we're kind of lost and meandering most of the time. And I in particular have just always been one of those kind of people who's guided by things, who's more kind of go with the flow rather than having a lot of plans and a lot of goals and a lot of, kind of here's something mapped out. It seems my whole life has just been a kind of almost, it's felt often like I'm just reacting to things. And as I've got wiser and learned to listen to my guides more, and the horses have been, so helpful, and so many aspects of nature, so many animals typically, because that's kind of where so much of my learning comes from. They kind of, I've learned to, I think, sort of respond rather than react to everything and just bounce around. It feels more like I'm just going with the energetic flow of it now, rather than being, kind of reactive to stuff that's happening to me. So I think, one of my biggest learnings has been that sense of, that there is this greater energy that we're part of, that we're all part of, and that, that kind of lack of resistance, from a Buddhist perspective, that lack of resistance, it's the resistance that causes the suffering and causes us to kind of get stuck in places. And working as an energetic practitioner, through Reiki and Qigong and all the various other energetic practices that I have, and my animistic sort of shamanic practices of listening to guides, has brought me back into that sort of sense of flow. But I think, where I started to sort of lose the way and really learn, when I think of this, all of us working with horses and the guidance, was when I was teaching riding. I was working as a coach. I had a corporate job and doing all this, had my own horse. And at that time, my horse was boarded elsewhere because I was kind of city-based, and working, and walking between all of those worlds. And this incredible soulmate of a horse that had come along to be my general guide in life and healer in an extraordinary way, started showing me that I was on the, wrong path, that I had lost my way so completely, that I was veering so far from my authentic self and everything that meant anything to me, my true values, that she was the one who started to course correct me. And she was a mare who was, she's in spirit form now, she's in the other world, but she was just this extraordinary mare who I had dreamt of. She had come to me in a dream before I met her in person. And the minute I met her, I knew her and she knew me. And this horse, I knew instantly, was going to have a significant impact in my life. And she just started showing me how to show up differently with horses, how I'd lost that coarse thread that I'd had when I was younger of being, communicating clearly with animals and nature and being inspired by them. And I'd got lost in the world of shoulds and, could and musts and all that kind of conditioned corporate cultural stuff that just wasn't me. And I was trying to fit in and be what I thought I should be. And, and it really wasn't working. And the universe had sent me so many messages, which I'd ignored. And of course, things had sort of gone, in a sort of spiral down. But I'd also I'd come out of a very traumatic, abusive relationship. And so I was exceptionally guarded. And this mare just showed me how much that, had all kind of come together, all the sort of various life events and traumas had come together to make me present as a person that I wasn't anymore, and that I'd lost, my connection to my own heart and my own core. And she just showed me step by step, through nudging, through really definitive action sometimes, that there was another way. And she was a mare that was so independent, so strong, such a leader. That was everything about her, just spoke of presence and leadership, an extraordinary kind of horse. And she showed me who I had been and who I could be, and led me down this path, showing me a different way. And that, that story led me to Barbara Rector, who was the first person that I trained with in this, work with the horses, and just led me to see and believe in a completely different way, and reopened my connection to my spirit guides, and everything. But I had so lost the way. So that was, one thread that kind of went through, a particular part of my life, but brought everything together and just helped me unarmor. What she did was break my heart open, stripped away the armor. And then in her final gift, when she transitioned, which was quite sudden, it wasn't an expected thing, although she was, in her 30th year. But there she really broke my heart wide open. And that showed me then all this compassion and empathy, and just opened me to so much more again. And so that, and showed me incontrovertibly that, there is no end to life, that we are always truly connected through her actions in her transition and post her transition. And so, she has been my biggest teacher, but I had to lose my way to get there. But the learning was profound and continues to be with her guidance. So that's an example from me, and I'll throw that to whoever wants to answer next. And if you need a kind of, but it's really to learn the way is to lose the way. So a time that you have perhaps got lost and where the learning that's come from that.
For sure. Katie, do you want to go next, or you want me to jump in there? I'll let you. Oh, you're on mute then.
You're muted, Katie.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my question was actually in that similar vein of like, what are mayors really here to teach us women, or those who identify as women? That was one of my questions. So I just think I've only ever had mayors. And so, yeah, I just think there's so much in who they are in the world that we can learn from. So, and knowing that so much of the horse world is female, it just made me be thinking about it, like what are they really here to show us, and what can they really help us activate? So you shared that so beautifully, Judy. So yeah.
Did you want to jump in on the question with the losing your way? Lose the way is to learn the way?
I think, the losing our way to learn our way is part of like the hero or the heroine's journey in so many ways, where I loved in my master's program, they said that, pilots are off course most of the time. So they're constantly course correcting. And I feel like so much of my journey has been who's leading it, right? To the equine leadership energy. There was for a long time my ego leading my life and wanting me to get to the next level in corporate, and I really loved that. I felt very on course until I wasn't, until I like sort of felt like I lost my way and I was selling horror movies for a living and then going to Agape, a church that means unconditional love, at night after work. And I was just not congruent, and I luckily found the courses and had my master's program really redefine like who is actually leading, who's driving the car, how do we get back on course, who's the pilot of my life. And it really became, oh yeah, like I do want a more soul-centered life, a service-based life. And my teachers from my master's program in spiritual psychology, they have a book called Loyalty to Your Soul, and that's exactly what it was for me. It was like, I am never going to be happy if I let my ego lead my life, because I will feel like am never enough, right? The ego's job is better than or less than. And so I'm always then in some form of disconnection instead of unity. And so I feel like for me it became finding my way through redefining what success meant to me, that it wasn't about the next rung on the ladder. It was about feeling of service, living into like my gifts, expressing my gifts and my calling, and then really deciding to kind of put loyalty to my soul first and let my soul drive the bus, drive the car, fly the plane. And really I had a horse, right, help me with that whole lead with love energy. And now Phoenix is really, the last 3 days has just been activating my leadership again. Like, you're at a new level now, so let's talk about where you're at now today. And so I feel like, we can lose our way on a daily basis and even a weekly basis. And it's like, what gets us back on path? And sometimes for me, it is usually a shakeup with a human or an animal that gets me to be like, oh, wait, hold on. Who gets to lead right now? And I said it to a friend earlier who like really wanted to be right about something. I'm like, I'm glad you get to be right. And I'm like, in our friendship, I'd rather be happy, and I just said that to someone earlier. And I did a session earlier here from the ranch about self-leadership. And there's something to, when we lose our way or find our way, that it's to me, it's a lesson in leadership. So I'm actually, yeah, I see how that would be a question that would come forward from this. So
nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love going third because you all say so much that I just like, oh, this and this, I could talk about this. So there's so many pieces here. well, I think what I'm drawn to is the cyclical nature of it all. And if we look to nature, it's the shedding. If I look to the horses, it's the shedding. It's in the springtime. If we look to the trees, it's the dropping of the leaves and the growing of the new ones. But if we look to humans, there's this expansion of consciousness. And each time we lose something and learn something, we go to a different level of consciousness. And then if we do it with awareness, then we're going to lose again. We're going to lose that. And I don't mean lose. I almost think that we bank it because we still have it. We're just not operating on it. But we still, I still remember, and we all still remember back the jobs we've had, the careers we've had, but we don't necessarily use them anymore. We don't live in that world anymore. But it's, each time something new it comes in to learn, I see it as a different level and a different level of consciousness or expansion of consciousness. And then something else, we lose that and something else comes in. We drop our leaf, we shed our hair, we drop our leaves, however nature does it, and something else is ready to come in at the right time. And it's always at the right time. Like there's never a time that something doesn't come to us that it isn't right. I think a lot of it is how we approach it, how we see it, how we welcome it, and stay open to it. And if we're closed to it, we might if we stay closed, then we're never losing, we're never learning. That's just not a cycle that we're going to go through because we're not following the natural cycle of nature, of which we are. And then maybe that ties into the whole thing. When we don't think of ourselves as part of nature, then we're not going to see that phrase that you said. It's just not, we're not going to see the lose and learn if we're not open to ourselves being a part of nature. I think it's just it's a natural cycle. And when we say open to it, it happens more and more and daily. And just Kate said, it's just daily and it's more comes in and we see more and we get more. So it's it's thank you for starting us off on such a great soul expanding, mind opening question. But yeah, I'm not sure that I think that we necessarily lose. We just don't use it anymore. For me, it would be like, I've got it. I'm just not going to use that. But I still think back to it and go, well, I'm not using it, but look what I learned there. We're keeping those little pieces of it. So, yeah.
I think that's right. It's like, because everything in nature works in a sort of spiral, or there is nothing linear, and the same with energy, it's never like that. So these patterns, as humans, we tend to have this kind of very linear focus, everything time and goal and stage oriented, whereas, when we are more attuned to the cyclical nature of nature, our true nature, as you say, and the way that energy works, it is more of a spiral. So I think of it as that sort of meandering, and just that what's around the next corner, that openness to that and that curiosity, rather than and enjoying what you found as you went round a new corner or a corner that you weren't expecting on the path, as opposed to that journeying directly to and seeing it being so fixated on something, which is how kind of the rational human kind of tendency and the goals that and values of the modern world focus on those kind of things of achievement, attainment, as Katie alluded to, with that sort of corporate thing. Whereas as we watch nature, we see that every tiny little thing involves some achievement, some success, in a way that is defined so differently to the typical way of defining it in this world.
Exactly. I asked when I interviewed George Brown Eyes from Colorado, because he was in the aerospace field. It just reminds me of something he said. And I said, how does a conversation or a decision-making process differ or is similar from that and the work you do with the Mustangs when you're in the field with them? And his answer, I remember it like it was yesterday because it's so profound. Is like, nobody had to be right. There was no ego involved. We came with aerospace. We came and brought together to bring everybody's ideas together. All had equal value, and all were for the idea of keeping something up in the sky or in space. They were all that. There wasn't my idea is better than yours. And when we go to the horses and we go, when he goes to his Mustangs, it was like, same. We're not here to beat each other on ideas. We're here to be open to the possibilities. And I think it's similar to me. It reminds me of that because it's staying open to the unknown. So, wow. What a great question to start with. Kate, do you want to jump in or do you want me to go? I'll leave that to you.
You can go.
You want me to go? Okay. I will look at my list because I had a few by the end of the day. Okay, I'll start with this one. I was recently listening to an interview with from Emergence magazine, and they were talking to a young gentleman from Northern Ireland, a young teenager who had written a book on called The Diary of a Young Naturalist. But he was talking about joy, and what struck me was this conversation they had about joy. And what Dara McNulty is the gentleman's name. And what he's talking about is joy is what will sustain us. If we look at the bigger picture of climate change and everything else, it often comes from advocating, often comes from fear. It comes from this place of fear. But if we come from that place of fear, when we try to solve problems, we're just going to go back to them. But if we come from a place of joy and wonder and awe, we'll be able to sustain ourselves. So my question, sort of riffing off that, is what sustains you and what do you believe will sustain us as maybe the bigger picture or the bigger collective? So yeah, that's my question. I will let either of you jump in there.
I feel like what sustains us in the future is the understanding of sustainability around basic resources in addition to like energy resources, and people feeling connection. Like it's usually what I hear the most is that people are seeking is some form of connection to a purpose, to themselves, to each other. I'm drawn to share that, like, a little earlier, I asked my horses to pull a card from the Awakening with Equines card deck that we created. And one of my mare Phoenix pulled intimacy. And I said to her, we're all seeking the same thing, aren't we? And I think in the future, that's a piece of what sustains us is that feeling of interconnection so that we don't, disconnection and loneliness has been a challenge, I think, globally for the last few years because of everything that's changed. And so there's this level, I think, of feeling into connection. I know for me, what sustains me is that form of community and the form of like knowing that I get to be with animals every day and be in nature. For sure, animals and nature is what keeps me going no matter what. But I love joy, awe, and wonder. Those are actually some of my biggest core values, and I feel like we can always look for the awe in anything, even if we just drive down a different street, or try a different place to eat. Like just the willingness to see like that I love novelty. That's one of my pieces, but I feel like awe and wonder come in often in novelty. That's why I think a lot of people like to vacation and travel. So I definitely think it's being so aware of who we are and what lights us up inside, and then also how we can help each other feel lit up as well. That's one of my new favorite words lately is being lit up. What does it mean to be lit up?
Mm-hmm. Nice. Judy?
Yeah, do you know, I mean, joy is so interesting because so many people struggle to actually feel joy because it's such an intense emotion. And so anyone that's kind of, you know, had a lot of trauma and, you know, who struggle with regulating their nervous system often shut down a little bit, you know, from feeling strong emotions. And because we have this, again, in this society, you know, people want to stuff down, suppress, ignore strong emotions, often particularly the more challenging ones. So people, you know, suppress grief and anger and sadness and that sort of thing. But by doing so, we actually suppress our capacity for joy. You know, you can't shut down one thing without it impacting the rest. And I find it amazing how many people I work with, you know, are just struggling to actually really feel and open to joy. And, you know, part of that is that being able to open to curiosity and wonder and awe with the world. It is a result of that disconnection, you know, that Katie was talking about, that so many suffer with, that, you know, if they feel not connected to themselves, their true selves, their values, and the nature around, you know, part of the world, then it's hard to actually see those things that can bring us so much joy in our busy lives, you know, things that are just simple and around us all the time, rather than it being the kind of holiday we've saved up for, you know, or the retreat that we've saved up for. I mean, we need to feel, to me, you know, I feel joy daily by having that, you know, connection with nature. And just every morning I start with joy in greeting the world, you know, and greeting the sunrise. And I end the day by, you know, watching and greeting the sunset and greeting the stars, you know, and just looking at the stars. I mean, just to stand up and outside and look at the stars and connect to the stars just brings that awe and wonder into the world. And so, you know, when I look up and see Sirius and, you know, Aldebaran, you know, the red eye of Taurus, and, you know, just all these stars that I, you know, are so frequent in this sky, you know, and when, you know, when Scorpius comes up and you know, then you can tell which time of year it is and what season we're in, you know, to follow the skies, to spend time in the morning when I have fed my horses, to take a few moments and do some qigong practice with them, and just to bring in that energy and to marvel at, you know, who's the songbirds and, you know, the color of the leaves on the trees and drops of dew glistening, you know, with the sun. I mean, just there is so much. That is what brings me joy daily and several times daily, you know, to see, like the other day, there was this little, I caught this flash of color and the grass, you know, and went to have a look, and there was this tiny little insect with just these amazing colors. I'd never seen anything quite like it. It was a little beetle, and the colors on it were extraordinary, and it had actually just got itself tipped up on and was sort of struggling to right itself a bit, and it must have been that movement that caused the flash of color that caught my attention. and then just to set that beetle right so that it could continue its journey and to marvel at its awesomeness. And, the colors in nature, just those things bring me just joy. That's what sustains me. And so, connecting to the earth and knowing that there's a greater energy at play, that there is greater wisdom at play, and that I'm a part of it, but that we are all connected. This sense that what is happening is how it's meant to be unfolding, and that there is, for me, there is a reason for it, hard as it is to fathom that with the amount of devastation and destruction that we see, and the behaviors that we see, to still tune into that greater purpose, that greater sense of destiny, of things unfolding as they're meant to unfold, and remembering that we all, essentially hold the same things within us, remembering that sense that we are, that though we come at things with different life lessons, with different contracts, we're at different phases in our lives, and remembering that. That's kind of, I think, what sustains me, to tune into the beauty around me, the lessons that are around me, always from nature. Yeah, the horses, it goes without saying, to have the horses and my, other animal companions and co-travelers, to tune into that sustains me to keep going. But the sense too of knowing that there is a far bigger purpose, and long after I have transitioned from this earth walk, that purpose will continue unfolding, but I know that I will still be connected with it. I will just be playing a different part in a non-human form. I might be in another form back on this earth, who knows, but that sustains me.
Okay. Interesting. For me, it's for sustaining me, I think personally, it's the energy that joy and wonder and awe hold. And I go back to 2 days ago when I was angry at something, and the exhaustion I felt at the end of the day. And it didn't sustain me, obviously, because I was exhausted. Didn't end the day on a happy note, because I spent the day in that space trying to get myself out of it, instead of going, probably going for a walk in nature or going to the horses, and it would have been snap like that. But it didn't sustain me. So what sustains is those joy, those wonders, those anything that carries that vibration of love in it. To me, then that ties in then with that what sustains us all. And there's that saying, what we love, we protect. And it's even, I think that we could say, yes, we love this, that's why we're trying to protect it, but there's a space in there where we need to hold that love and that wonder, and that we have to hold that energy, because we get into this, it becomes that minor years, it becomes that ego. I'm right, you're wrong. And it becomes that space. And I'm not disputing that there's, but it's that space we get into of proving correctness, that it just becomes this, I think ties it to Kate's, that separation. It's that it pulls us apart, and we don't have that connection anymore. And it's a spiral, but it's a spiral going the wrong way, or the opposite way than we want to go, right or wrong, but it goes the opposite way that we need to go, and it doesn't sustain. we all, we all live with stress, and we've all probably lived in those very stressful situations where we're exhausted. But now build that as a collective, and we exhaust as a collective. So what sustains us? What are those energies that sustain us? Is those energies of joy and wonder and love, and we see the world a different way. Still there to bring everything right and to bring everything in order as it needs to be, but I think it needs to come, and that's why that statement really sat with me and sat in my heart, is like, yeah, we need to come from this different place, because if we just come from anger, it becomes right and wrong, and then we just pull ourselves apart. Joy does not pull us apart. Joy brings us together. So I think that's, for me, that's what that statement really jumped out for me, is like, yeah, that brings us, it brings us together. And that goes back to the old story, basically, what wolf do you want to feed?
Yeah.
The wolf that holds joy, the wolf that holds anger. So, yeah. So let's jump on to our next one. So Kate, let's have you jump in with your next question. Thank you for all those.
Gosh, I think my question has to do with like, why is, we may not know why, but what is your experience with the awakening process and how it can be extremely uncomfortable at times? And even potentially, like, as we're up leveling, almost it does create a level of separation before there's more connection, meaning we become an island for a moment in time and space before we move forward, right? As it's been one of my experiences. So what is your experience with the awakening process, and why do you think it is so uncomfortable at times?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you want to go, Linda?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of just downloaded there real quick. That was like, boom. I think we have to, and it goes back to Judy's comment and phrase at the beginning. I think we have to lose something before we level up, as you say, before we continue to that next expansion. I think we have to lose something, and losing something is hard. I don't want to let go. I don't want to do this because I'm afraid to do this. I've heard this in conversation multiple times lately. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to do that because I'm afraid what might happen, and being afraid of that unknown. So we don't do it, as opposed to stepping into that unknown with like a love and like, it goes back to mine, like stepping into a joy. It's like, how can we move forward with that and that excitement, like, oh goodness, what's around the corner? I'm so excited, as opposed to, oh crap, I don't want to look. I don't want to see what's around the corner, because I might have to change. I might have to step out of my comfort zone. So I think that for me, that's a lot of time. And what I hear, and for me, it's like, that process is, like you say, it's a separation from what was, that bit of time in the midst to sort of assimilate, and then step into what might be. But there has to be that, we have to take the step. Nobody's going to take it for us. We can go to all the self-help things we want to. We can go to all of us facilitators that most of us on here are, and do all that. But we have to do the work. We have to take the steps ourselves. And I think we just have this attachment and separation at the same time. If that makes sense. We've got this attachment to others, and this separation from ourselves. And we have to detach and connect with ourselves. So yeah, that's what came up for me. I will keep that short.
Oh, thanks for the question, Katie. It's, we do struggle so much with change, most humans, and of course our brains are wired for loss aversion. And so the loss that Linda just referred to, when we, if we do this, if we grasp this, if we, become this, then we lose that. There's that sort of polarity that exists within us, that we grapple with. But the thing is, when, as we go through awakening, there is that level of discomfort as we look at how we've been showing up in the world and how we've been. And then we look at it, and we can look at that sometimes with like, oh my God, how could I be like that? And how could I do that? Like with our, our ignorance, all the, as we learn, as we journey with horses and animals, and things, as we're learning different ways, and we look back at perhaps things that, how we have been doing things, and then feel guilt or regret from doing them in that way from our ignorance. So there can be that discomfort that we sit in. But there's also the sense that as we do awaken, we become more aware, more conscious, then our lens changes, and what we value sometimes changes and shifts. What we're prepared to tolerate and accept shifts. And so that means that all our relationships potentially come into question. How we're showing up with, family, friends, colleagues. I mean, this is, the thing that finally kind of really drove me out of the corporate world, because I just could no longer be that person that was having to show up in that office anymore. And I couldn't be truly authentic. And there was a sense of, really wanting to be like who I was around the horses and my horses at that point in time, and the work that I was doing part-time with the horses. But then being somebody different, having to armor up, to go into work. And I just didn't want to be that anymore. But it meant having to let go of all of that and take that leap of faith to just go and do my work, and let go of the security of a salary and all the rest of it, And there's that thing where, yes, for a while we can feel quite alone. There's a process in shamanic work, it's like the initiation process of any transformational journey. There is that period where you go through something where you are alone. You're in a uncomfortable, potentially, it was a challenging situation, and you're alone, and you have to then kind of come through that, and then integrate again. That's part of, the heroine's journey, the hero's journey. Any initiatory journey of transformation involves these various stages. And in shamanic journey, you go through this process where you're dismembered. And so you go, and of course, you never journey alone shamanically. You've always got one of your power animals or spirit guides with you. But you see yourself being ripped apart, literally dismembered, and then remembered. And it's an extraordinary journey to do. But yeah, it's that sense of isolation that we get because our perspective, the way we're now viewing the world, has shifted. And so the way we're viewing our relationship to everything and everyone around us shifts. And that can feel very isolating and really lonely. And that's where so many people struggle and might want to revert back and go to the default, because it's also everything in us is screaming, this isn't safe. Go back to what you know, because that feels safe and comfortable. So that's kind of how I speak to that.
Thank you very much. That's I think the safety is very interesting there that you bring that up. What we perceive as safety.
Yes.
Yeah.
What our nervous system perceives as safety.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Katie, I'll let you answer your question.
Well, yeah. Well, I heard something recently that helped me on the isolation and the island piece, which is, it was a quote or something that said, I've stripped everything away from you so that you no longer hear all the other voices in the chatter of the world. You can just hear my voice. And that was, it's God, it's hearing the voice of God, or if you want to call it universe, spirit, or your higher self. What's interesting is, the years ago, I was on a podcast and a woman said she really felt like the horses were ascension partners. And it really made me think quite a lot about what that means. And, right before this call, I had a little bit of my own initiation happen. And I feel like I'm still in this process of the awakening, of moving out of the comfort zone, because leaving this land here in Colorado has been like a 3 or 4 year journey of me really setting the intention and wanting to be out of here, and it not having manifested yet. And I'm a pretty good manifester, and it has served so much that I'm now seeing, even just right before, how perfectly timing it was for me to get a big, massive trigger and betrayal happen right before this call. Because it is that initiation to move us outside of the comfort zone of, like, it has been safe here. I have been protective of this land. I love this land deeply. And when I spoke out loud about my trigger and what was happening, of this group trying to come and take this land over here, I immediately popped into a past life, if you believe in them. And I realized, oh, this is the next layer of my work. I've been asking to see, what is the piece that's been keeping me stuck? Where have I been struggling to release this land? You can hear my mare flow out in the background. And I got it. Like, I got it. And now the birds are singing and agreeing, but there's that level of, like, it is doing it. There's this process where the awakening is allowing us the opportunity to do the inner work, so that my master's program used to call it, like, removing the rocks from your backpack. If we travel through life and each trauma or each thing that happens, we put a rock in our backpack and we get weighed down by them, that the awakening process is removing the rocks, being willing to remove the rocks so that it's not so heavy anymore. And I just got, I'm still in a ton of energy from what just happened, literally like several minutes before this recording here, this event. And I will do my work, around it, and process the layers that are here. I'm grateful it's here, even though it's really uncomfortable at the same time. So thank you for even just listening to that piece, because it helps me to be witnessed and heard in that.
Divine timing, eh?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And
it's interesting, Katie, as you answer that. I love that, because the Egyptians had the belief that when you transition, your soul was weighed against a feather to see how light it is. And that's, if your soul weighed more than the feather, then you hadn't done your work, because that is the work. I think it is that lightening. To me, that's what enlightenment means. It means that unburdening, so that we cross the bridge with souls as light as a feather.
What a lovely way to put it. What a lovely, yeah. Okay, Judy, let's go back to your next question. Round 2.
There's Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a great teacher of mine, had a saying that for things to reveal themselves to us, we need to abandon our views of them, which I think, is just so relevant. We hold on, or this creates so much of the polarity in the world these days, is because we hold so tightly to views, and we make so many assumptions about things. And I know for myself, that every time, and regularly still, and certainly with any clients, it's kind of abandoning views or letting go or holding more lightly views of how they're perceiving the horses, these things that show up. So that's my question, for you, when have you had to abandon your views of something for it to be revealed to you, or how are you doing that now? Is there something going on right now that you are letting go of, releasing your tightly held views about?
Mm.
I'm going to throw that to you before I answer it.
Hey, if you want to jump in, or we'll both just take a moment and hold that
Or
one.
I can jump in if it helps to give you a bit of time to think about it. So if, I think the horses show us this so beautifully all the time, because, we can have those labels that we put on a horse, like people do all the time, like one of the commonest things, or a very common perception in the horse world is, chestnut mares can be difficult. I mean, and I've seem to have a team of redheads, and they seem to have attracted all these red ones to me, and I love the fact that there's a wonderful Native American, story about the red horse being the one that shows up to remind us to play, which was definitely something I needed more of in my life. But yeah, that sort of daily thing of just, working with who's the horse that's showing up in front of you in the moment, not just the horse that they were even a moment ago or yesterday. It's like, who's showing up now? And to really be present in the moment, interacting authentically with anybody or anything, we have to abandon our views of them. And I think that, there's been so many tightly held beliefs I once had that were drilled into me through, I think the sort of horsemanship thing and the way that, we were taught, so in my journey through riding and riding instruction and horses and coaching with horses, I've let go of so much, had to abandon so many views. But I think part of this is related to shadow work too, because there's that, our journeys, the longest journey we take is our journey, into our own interior. And it's through cultivating that we really come to understand and grow more compassion for anybody else by, owning those aspects of us that we don't either are completely unaware of or don't believe that we have. And lately I've been, considering the concept of dignity a lot in the world. And I've been considering the concept of, animal dignity in particular. And so trying to abandon and allow these things to reveal themselves to me. I have I don't like to see people doing things to animals, people kind of, dressing them up or doing things to them, and so at the moment, one of the things that I'm allowing myself to hold less tightly is, what it is about that really affronts me, and my views on, why people can't see animals, and as, and all more than humans, stones, trees, as being of equal value, this whole, or more value than humans, this sense of humans being dominant and being important, being at the center, this anthropocentric sort of view in the world. Right now, that's something that I'm trying to hold less tightly, to allow these kind of things to reveal themselves to me, because I think it's key, something like this, for humans to value the more than human equally, to me, is part of, going back to one of your questions, part of sustaining. It's part of the sustainability of this, beautiful Mother Earth. And so that's something that I'm trying to hold less tightly at the moment and abandon my views on. But yes, there's been multiple examples with horses, and chestnut mares was just one of them. Some of the wonderful lessons I've learned from my beautiful, sensitive horses. But I'll let you get on with an answer to that now.
Kate, do you want to step in there with your horse there? Sounds like somebody else wants to talk.
Phoenix, actually, this is Phoenix. She once said to me, there's so much humans don't really even know about horses. And I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I'm sure, right? Like there's only so much science has shown us about ourselves, about them. I'm in a very interesting part of my spiral with my journey with horses, where I went from almost this purist place where like I didn't ride for a while because I didn't even think horses wanted to be ridden, to coming into this like, oh, cool. So you're doing that like horsemanship thing together, the two of you, and like looking at it differently, like looking at it as, is the horse a willing partner? If so, like they're in relationship and they're doing something together, and who am I to kind of judge it, because I still probably will never be able to stomach horse racing, that kind of thing. My old racehorse still loves to race, but she doesn't want to do it for people. She wants to do it for herself, right? She races this one and she always wins. And so, but it's one of those things where, I think that, it's not always fully easy to understand the other species. It's not even easy for women and men to understand each other, right? And so it's like to allow there to be grace as we are questioning beliefs and questioning what we know and what we don't know, being willing to say when we don't know something, I think is the humble approach. I just like to now look at horses in general as individuals the way we are, and knowing that there's so much. I think one of the big things that Phoenix has been talking to me about lately, and it's been on my mind the last few days particularly, is how do we approach them without worry? Because when we love them, that whole like we protect what we love that came up earlier, I want to always protect them and keep them safe. And so I'll go up and I'll be like looking at them and, is everything okay? Is this okay? Is that okay? Is your weight okay? Oh my God, it's not. And then realizing that, they have their own life paths. That I have a lot of influence over that, but like they're in their own soul contracts. They have their own past. They're doing their own thing. They're working out their own stuff here. My two mares don't always get along, and they have a sisterhood that they are working things out. And who am I to make that awful and wrong all the time, right? Or who am I to worry so much, because I'm just putting the fear energy on it, right? And so it's like a reminder to come and see them and visualize them as healthy and whole and happy and in their own process. And my question is, how can I serve you, or what do you have to share with me today? But they are evolving. And I think, I have a hard time when people are like, well, horses are just horses. And I'm like, they're sentient beings and they are evolving just like we are. So they're in their own process of awakening too, right? And we get to be curious about what are we all still learning from each other. And I used to have a hard time with animals being dressed up, and my goats love their little holiday costumes. If it makes you feel at all better, Judy. My horses do not want to wear, anything like for the holidays, and I'm like, okay, but like usually my goats are like, yeah, let's do it, because it's done from a sense of playfulness and joy and spreading like that energy rather than like me thinking I have to make them like humans. Like it's so I think so much it is about us. It's the intention, right? Like my intention with it is celebration and spreading joy. And it's not to make them like me to do like that. It's not to make them like, okay, I'm gonna make them my human child, because they're not my human child, right?
Yes.
Anyways, I knew what you meant, but I had to like mention that too. I think we're all just sort of continuing to just own what we know, what we don't know. And I personally still want to study even more of the science to things. Yeah. Phoenix is like, yes, please, more science. So
Nice. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Katie. And I love that. Yeah, I can just see your goats, thinking, great, we get to eat the costume afterwards too. Having had goats myself in the past. Thank you.
It's funny. I think for me, what am I holding tightly to? And that's as I get older and I have taken steps to live in what I call raw authenticity, not just authentic, but raw, deep, soulful authenticity that I am trying to not doubt myself. And if my heart, my body says do something, I do it. But it's like there is I always think of it like if somebody's going to push me off a cliff, the closer I get to the cliff, the more I'm going to scream and the more I'm going to fight. That's just my analogy. It might then that's my ego too. So the more I say no, I'm going to follow this, the louder my ego. And I'm finding lately for myself that what is I'm not going to say what I'm holding tightly, but what is holding me tightly is that ego saying, no, you have all these past experiences. That's what shaped you. And the other side of me is going, but I don't have to hold them anymore. It's not as simple as, and I try not to use the word letting go, because I think in this day and age we're told so much, just let it go. And it's not that easy. It's not easy. Releasing it is that's the word I use because it's gentler, and I can release a breath of air or a little bit at a time. And I can't letting go just doesn't work for me. I just can't just let something go. It just it just doesn't work. But it's this what's holding me, what aspects are holding me still. And as I get closer to dropping them, they get louder. And they cry and they yell and they like, no, you're not safe. Don't go there. You're not safe. And like, but I am, because I have a parachute and I know how to skydive. So I'm gonna jump. So that to me is that idea of those aspects, and just yeah.
Yeah, I like that, because it's also it's abandoning our views of ourselves too, like how we've shaped ourselves. We're all shaped by our life experiences and various other things, but those things that have been how we viewed ourselves at one point, sometimes we have to let go of that a little bit, like we can hold on tightly to something, but whenever we release a little bit of something, there is that sense of a transition, and there's a little bit of grief, a little bit of resistance, all those things that come in. And so the same, whether it's an internal lens or an external one, as we shift to hold a new perspective and to allow it to be that blank canvas, to really view anything with beginner's mind, is really hard, but it requires that curiosity that, that Katie talked about, and that, willing to sort of to really take a different perspective. And then every time we do that, it just increases our own awareness, I think, and, encourages us to hold a little less tightly to what we so, firmly believe or feel and might be true, or to just, realize that, yes, this is true for me, but I don't need to grasp it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for being here, but I don't need you anymore.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That was a great one. That was a thinker. Kate, do you want to do your last question?
How's Katie's phone holding up?
Yeah.
Or connection? Is she here?
We got you still, Kate? Okay, I'm going to jump in just to keep us moving, and we will grab her question then. I have a few two, but I think we've sort of covered one. So I'm going to say I think this is a simple one, but I'm betting it maybe not be. So, and it came up of a conversation I had with somebody this morning. It's like, how do you take care of yourself in the presence of another? That could be in a conversation, it could be just in the presence, but how do you take care of yourself in the presence of another?
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Katie, did you want to go? I see you're charging up again.
I about that. Was not planning to be here at the ranch, but
No, I've been there before, midway through it.
yeah,
Discussion, having to charge up.
yeah. Um, and I do have my question ready when ready. I love this question because that's actually my definition of compassion, Linda. It's like there's being present with ourselves while we're present with someone else. And my personal experience of that was when I was with an ex at the time and he lost his hand in a car accident. And I had to be with him in the hospital in Las Vegas at the time. And I had to really be with myself, who was grieving and scared and all of that. At the same time, I had to be with him and what he was going through. And so it for me, it's about present, like checking in, maybe even like moment to moment. I usually like to tell my inner child when she's scared or upset, okay, we can't process this right now, but we'll, because we have to be here. Like when I was in corporate America, we're going in the bathroom, we'll do what we can, and I'll meet with you later tonight. And so, but it's like to stay with ourselves when we also need to stay with someone else it's an energy thing. It's about holding and expanding energy, but I think it's also really about um being present and knowing our own needs. So like I like doing needs assessments with clients where it's like, what is your need? What do you really need? What do you really want from this? And so it's just being able to stay in connection with that inner voice that knows what we need. And yeah, and I've really had to practice that at times, especially also being a facilitator. Like as we all know, at times it's like our own stuff can come up when other people's stuff's coming up. So how can we hold space for both and know that we're all connected too?
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that and resonate with so much of that, Katie. Yeah, for me, I mean, it's similar. Do my energy hygiene practices, so to ensure, because I've been in that space, where, um, when I first started doing this work and doing this type of thing, that sometimes, I didn't seal up my energy and hold it and be truly kind of present with myself, in a grounded way all the time, that with my energy field sort of filled up and still able to soften and allow the other in, but able to sort of hold that membrane, that invisible membrane that allowed stuff to come, to me and for me to feel it, but to just let it sort of go, not come in and hold it and for it to be inside. So I felt, often some of that, negative energy or other unwanted energies come inside and would have to do sort of clearing activities to get rid of it. And over time I learned to skill myself in my own energy hygiene practice to such a way that things can come at me but they don't come into me anymore, that I can hold that field. But if you forget to sort of do that, you know, and like it's easy for me to do in the presence of nature, in the presence of working with the horses and clients at home or in a workshop. But, you know, if I'm traveling, I go into the city or something, you know, and all that sudden energy and all that stuff is around me, to hold my presence then, you know, that takes, you know, a greater kind of focus, you know, on being, you know, very present, as Katie said, to really have those things that help me stay grounded and true to me, and to sort of keep that around me. So it is that energetic practice, that alignment. And, you know, I will bring in sort of visualizations, you know, that I can just momentarily, you know, kind of bring in as I'm just checking in with myself, or just reminding when I'm amongst, you know, that kind of energy of all my cells kind of pixelating and smiling and being kind of, you know, together, but within this sort of space or something like that. Or I have a, you know, something, usually I have something with me too, to help, you know, particularly if I'm traveling, I will have some stones with me, or like this, you know, I have this always when I'm away. The hair in this is from Indigo Flame, my mare that led me down this journey. So that, you know, just to touch that would be enough to help me come back to what's true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just a somatic touch to presencing with yourself, that sort of somatic awareness, that energetic awareness, in a grounded way, always being grounded, and knowing that the earth, you know, supports me, and that I'm surrounded by helping spirits and guides, and that so is the person or other that I am interacting with. Mm-hmm. Those kind of things, bringing that to my awareness, you know, briefly, just to help me stay present. That's what I find.
Beautiful. For me, it's I guess this came out of a conversation where there was a challenge. And the first thing we talked about was breathing, and being able to say in a conversation, I need to take a breath now, or I'm just going to take a few breaths, and being able, and guess, to have the courage sometimes to say, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to stand here right in front of you and do it, but I'm going to take a few breaths. And it often diffuses a situation if needed, or brings the energy down on both parts. But and then it's having that clarity. For me, I take care of myself by having clarity. And if I have to take a moment to gather my clarity and formulate it for myself and then articulate it. And, you know, in business, that's often been, and allow the other person to take a breath themselves. And I always go back, there was a chapter it's an old book, I know, but in the Celestine Prophecy. And there was a chapter in there about energy, and that people like to take our energy, and vice versa. There's times when we're it's like we're gathering energy, and you know, for me, that was a real aha moment for me. And it's like, no, this is my you can't have this. You know, you can't take it. So it's like you say, it's that clarity, it's that setting that boundary, that energetic boundary, to say, no, this is my energy, and I'm not giving it away unless I choose to give it away. And you know, that's always really helped me, being able to take care of myself and my energetic self in any kind of conversation, whether I'm willing to, you know, let it go and share it, or where I'm not willing to share it, and being able to have that clarity and take that breath and say, no, I'm not willing to share it at the moment. And then it's that, again, it's that body awareness. It's that, because our body tells us when we want to be in that space or not. And I hear you with, you know, being in the city is just overwhelming at times, and being able to hold that or step away from that overwhelm and bring that overwhelm down a notch, and being able to do that, which is, you know, for anybody that's highly sensitive, it's it's hard to do. It takes practice. It's hard to do. So taking care of ourselves in that, when you have a lot of people around, or going to a conference where there's a lot of people, and how do we look after ourselves in those moments? So yeah, it's something I think we all do well to consider before we jump into situations and have ourselves overwhelmed and saying things maybe we shouldn't say, or depleting our own energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Lovely, Linda. And Katie, you've kind of brought in full circle, what Katie was saying too, because you're attending to your own needs in the moment and being aware of them, but also taking the pause, that beautiful pause and breath that allows us to respond to rather than react to, and that pause that allows you to kind of think, what needs to happen now?
Yeah, absolutely.
What wants to express now, and rather than just that reactive
yeah. Well, and
pinging off each other, even in a challenging conversation. What needs to happen now?
And that moves us, I find almost immediately, that breath moves us from a space, like you say, reactive could be in anger or fear, and it moves us to a space of love and compassion, as you said, Katie. It's like it moves us, just a breath moves us to a different space very quickly.
Yes.
So awesome. Lovely. Okay, Kate, final question.
Oh gosh. Okay. So a holistic veterinarian asked me this question earlier, and when he did, I went, "This is what I'm going to ask today." He was interested in what's the one major kind of domino that we need to tap that creates the rest of the domino effect for the world, both pet parents and holistic, veterinarians, vet med and pet parents, to embrace, the holistic medicine more, right? That was his question to me. And I worked in vet medicine for a while in corporate America. And and then obviously I gave that my perspective from different places. But my question to both of you is, what is the one domino that we would that we think might create the biggest ripple impact in the equine world for the betterment of horses?
That's a big question.
I don't even have an answer myself.
A huge question.
It could be its own thing. Its own Zoom.
Totally. I mean, because there's so much that needs to shift, but what's the one thing?
Yeah.
I think the one thing, would be to truly understand and view the horses, a horse, any horse, but to see the horse as a sentient being with agency, because there are shifts happening, and the idea of welfare and all these things, keep sort of happening. But there is still so much it, from a Gestalt perspective in the horse world. There is still so much, I pay for you and you will do on my agenda. There is still so much doing to you, even if it seems to be doing from a compassionate view. And people love their horses, and I'm sure, the vast majority of people who interact with horses do love their horses. But, for the horse to truly have agency and to allow that to be, and to have a say in what's going on, to view that as being valid. If people could shift to that, that would have such an impact, because so many people still don't. So many people are still thinking, well, still go into to see their horse with their agenda. We need to do this competition. You need to behave like this in this state. And then they might be doing all the best things welfare wise to, modern standards, to the way that they believe that the horse, should be kept, wants to be kept. But to really see a horse's as an equal being, somebody that is as capable, as has such a valid right to be in this world, to be in their own world, to live with the dignity of horses, not dignity or consent as it relates to a human, but as it relates to a horse. To be seen as a horse from the horse world, from the horse collective, not a horse being in, a human need and subject to human needs. But that shift is so huge. That dominoes feels like such a big wall rather than a single domino that needs to fall. But that's what comes to me right now.
That's a huge question. Like, just
very
good one. But it's funny, and I might ask you if I can share this question, because so I'm talking at a conference in the summer, and we're going to have a dialogue like this, but I'm going to bring the questions, and it will be basically horse welfare, and let's consider the horse in all of everything we do. Let's consider the horse. What about the horse? And we're going to have that. But for me, in that, as the host of that, or the facilitator of that, it is, and bear with me on this, I think I might be going somewhere, is how do we learn to have dialogues like a horse? Meaning the same, we're not standing out in the field neighing at each other, but how do we have the same aspects that they have, like 100% honesty, no judgment, no comparison? How do we, no advice, like they speak, they act, they live in authentic community. When we can have and start to have those kind of conversations with each other, seeing the horse as a model, then perhaps we can, that comes back to the equal to, or even more than, is seeing them as a model of this, and like, oh, well, that's a new way of doing things. Let's kick that tire, let's kick that domino over. And I think there's many dominoes. It's one of those things where you've got those huge domino ones where you have to start at 4 different places, or 20 different, or 200 different places, just to get to the same end. It To me, that's one part of it, is that how do we, in my world, the way where I work, it's how do we have these conversations with all of those aspects that they show us? Because that's very hard for us to do. And that's what, I love these conversations, but these conversations don't tend to be charged. A conversation like that can be very charged. How do we do that? Leave our egos at the gate and have these conversations like a horse, like with all of those aspects in it, and just hear and hold each other's perspectives in love. I can hold a point of view and not have to live by it, but I can hold it. I can hold it in my heart. And how can we start to have these conversations? Because the horses, we go to them all the time with different points of view and different stuff. And this is a big part of this conversation, is what do we bring to them? But they hold whatever that happens. They still hold our points of view in love. They hold us in their hearts. So how do we, and I think by having those conversations like that and learning to converse like that, we start to see them in that different way, and that becomes betterment. Again, it goes back to we look after what we love. So
goes back to abandoning our views.
100%. Leave them at the gate. Absolutely.
It brings it all the questions we've asked, come into trying to answer this biggest question here.
It's like we had this plan, but we didn't.
Katie, your answer.
Yeah.
It kind of weaves what you're both saying. I went to a ranch once in Malibu and they had a sign outside that said, "Leave your ego here at the gate," before you pulled in. It was really cute. I think it comes into, like, for me, it was always, can I help people respect animals more? And if so, we protect what we love as this theme. It's very much my energy today with this land and my animals. So I'm very in that space of like fiercely wanting to protect what I love. And so that was always like, could I teach respect? Maybe. I think it's something that we awaken to when we understand equality at a different level. I think it's something that, to me, I hear the big words dismantle speciesism, right? But like, how do we do that when we're still having human struggles amongst ourselves, like, let alone thinking, my parents love animals and they still don't see them at the level that I see them. There's still so much more of a human centric world that we live in. So I do agree with seeing them as sentient. I completely agree with them as like, can we be more horse-like? Can we role model the horse as a way, as a system? I think what we all know is that nature has been here before us, will be here after us. Like, that is where sustainability is. That's where we really have a lot of the truth, is in that, is going back to nature. So I think as people, what I'm staring at the trees here who've always really guided me for the last 6 years on this property. I'm gonna get emotional because I'm really feeling this property right now. Is there's that level of like getting people outside and being with nature gets people to translate that into protecting earth, protecting animals, protecting each other, and not this protection of like, right or wrong, good or bad, but just this like, I love this, why wouldn't I? Of course, it's part of who I am to have that mother archetype, to nurture and protect and allow what I love to survive and to thrive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Love that, Katie. And that's why we do the work, right? I mean, that's why I continue to do leadership work, with the horses, with corporates, having wanted to have nothing to do with the whole toxic corporate thing, and just wanting to do the spiritual development work that I do with individuals kind of one-on-one. But in all the corporate things, what I see is that, we're sowing seeds of compassion. We're sowing seeds of awareness, of inviting people into a natural environment, and holding, and asking them to recognize and honor and pay attention to that environment, and then having the horses show us how we can be better leaders, better people, by observing how they are interacting. And each time, because it's novel often for a lot of people. Yes, there is usually someone who's got some horse experience, but their view of them shifts so completely when they have those kind of experiences. And then, they develop that awareness of a sentient other and start to think differently. And those are, people that have the money and the position and the power to make change. So you're sowing those seeds of compassion so that we will tread more lightly, which is kind of, my general raison d'etre. But, and I think this is so with the horse world equally, that the more, and there are more and more people, when I think back to when I started in this sort of space, there were so few practitioners, certainly in Australia. And I mean, you know, there was no training even of practitioners in Australia. And I mean, it's multiplied, it's grown so hugely. So more and more people are getting the opportunity to see this. And yes, that includes some horse people. And every time we have one of those interactions, every time we introduce someone to our horses, you know, there's that opportunity to sow those seeds of awareness and awakening, as Katie says.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only other thing that came in right away is the intuition, listening to our intuition too, to really be like, because I think we all know in the horse world at some point, oh, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel good. What I'm doing doesn't, I don't want to continue this. Like, this is maybe what I knew, what I was taught, right? But my experience of awakening with the horses is I don't need to do pressure and release the way I was taught. I don't need to ride the way I was taught. I can let go and find a new path or a new way. And it was really because I started to trust the feel of it more, and I trusted my intuition more. So I wish for that too. I think that's another big domino, is getting people to listen to themselves and feel into, like, does this even feel good to do with a horse? You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huge. Mm.
Mm. We're going to sit with that one for a while. I have to do a part two just on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, ladies, for these questions. And thank you for your answers. We're at an hour and 3/4 now.
Wow.
Guess an hour was being a little ambitious. So I'm going to say thank you here, and then I'll stop recording and we'll stay on for a bit. But thank you both. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate, for being here. I know you are facing some challenges there, and I'm so glad that you are here. And I hope it was at least a little bit healing for you to.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
For those that are listening, those that are here, those are listening, thank you for being here or listening in the future. And if you have any inclination or intuition that says you might want to try one of these conversations, do get in touch. I think this is a new way and a healthy and maybe one of those little domino ways of maybe learning to just speak further and have these dialogues with each other. So with that, thank you and good night or good day.